Hi, this is Joe Caramagna, and you're listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.
Well, greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to a very special episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Verbanis. This is episode 191, and as always, I've got the best gosh darn co-host out there. That is Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. When you walk the streets, you'll have no cares. If you walk the lines and not the squares. As you go through life, make this your goal. Watch the donut, not the hole.
There is some life wisdom right there. I felt like I just climbed up to the mountaintop, entered the cave, and kneeled at the feet of the master.
There you go.
No idea where it came from, but
the master would have been Burl Ives.
Burl Ives, really?
Burl Ives, 1950.
Wow.
He wrote the Donut song.
I had never even heard of the Donut song, but I'll be looking it up.
Yeah. There's it's the Donut song. I guess it was kind of like a children's song. And it's here you go. It's written on the rainbow in letters made of gold. Written on the rainbow, there's wisdom to behold. My friend, the little sparrow flew close enough to see. Written on a rainbow in this philosophy. Little angels wrote it so folks on earth would know. Basically, that as you go through life, make this your goal. Watch the donut, not the hole.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Focus on what you have, not what you don't have.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. So, Bob, why am I quoting you the donut song today?
Well, Rick, I don't know. Why are you? I mean, I know we talked about donuts in our previous conversations, and I know we're both fans of donuts for better or ill.
Donut.
But there has to be a deeper reason for this.
You know me, Bob. I always have a deeper reason. So our guest today, Joe Caramagna, he is known as the Donut Guy. Like if you go on his social media platforms, like, that's one of the first things he mentions. He's the donut guy. And then like you see some of his posts, he's posting about donuts. Okay. I got to ask him when he gets here. That's going to be like one of the first things I ask him about him being the donut guy.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear the story behind that.
We got him on because he's the lettering guy, but now you're telling me he's the donut guy too. So
yeah. It's cool because I feel like, it only took us 3.5 years, Bob, but we're collectors by nature, right?
Yeah. True.
And so it always felt odd to me that we would have an editor, a writer, a penciler, an inker, a colorist on the show, but not the letterer. And it gnawed at me and gnawed at me. And who better to get than Joe Caramagna, who is one of the most prolific, no pun intended, letterers out there. And I mean, he's on dozens of books. He's been on Captain America since the Ed Brubaker Volume 5. I mean, I can't wait to ask him so many different questions.
Well, I think it's going to be really great because he's got a recognizable name. I mean, I it's going to be hard to imagine a comic reader out there, particularly in our sphere, that doesn't recognize Joe's name. But that's the weird thing, right? Like we recognize the name, but what do we really know about this Joe?
That's true.
We're going to find out.
Yep. Yeah. And we're also going to talk about his writing because he's been writing for a while as well. And we got to ask him about the Taco Bell Captain America special, right?
Oh, you know it. Yeah. You know it.
So Bob, not a lot to get into before we jump into today's. And also, by the way, I thought it was perfect because in 2 days from now, Bob, 2 days from now is the National Donut Day.
Oh,
yeah. Do you have a favorite donut?
I like many different kinds of donuts. I had a donut this morning, Rick. I had a sour cream donut this morning. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, Bob. I hate sour cream.
Uh-huh.
I don't put sour cream on anything. If something gets served to me in a restaurant and had sour cream on it, I would
Uh-huh.
not eat it.
Really?
My favorite donut of all time is a sour cream donut.
Really? There you
I
go.
know.
I know. Well, we have I went to the store. I had to pick up a couple things for dinner. And I saw this, like, now normally I wouldn't get donuts at like the supermarket, right? Publix down here, they make a pretty good carrot cake. So I thought, well, it was like a 6-pack of sour cream donuts. And I thought, my wife loves sour cream donuts. I'll pick up the 6-pack. And they were delicious. It's not my favorite though. As
Okay.
much as I like all kinds of donuts, I will always go for a jelly filled.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I just like a good
Now,
jelly filled.
like, uh, what kind of jelly?
Well, I prefer lemon, but I'll take a raspberry in a pinch.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like a custard?
I'm not a custard guy. I'll eat it.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll eat it. I'll stuff it in my face.
Man, I love donuts. I could eat them every day,
Uh-huh.
but I think I have maybe like half a dozen a year
Yeah.
because I'm trying to watch my girlish figure and I am not succeeding. And so I
Uh-huh.
just know having as many donuts as I want would not be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you could always try to walk it off.
It's true.
Eat a
You know,
donut while you're walking. Just sort of balance it out.
uh I can't wait till I get to that point in my life where I'm older and I just don't care.
Yeah. Well, you are older.
I know. I mean,
So.
like older than now, Bob.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I was like,
Yeah.
you're only missing half the equation.
Yeah. just, just adjust your attitude. Just like you're
That's
gonna
it. You're
adjust
older,
your
but you care. You just got to adjust half that equation.
yeah. Adjust your attitude along with adjusting your belt. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that's why
I
they
had a
make
cousin tell me,
elastic.
he goes, just buy bigger clothes.
Yeah. There you go. Problem solved.
Uh, Bob, birthday coming up. So in addition to the National Donut Day, a birthday coming up in a couple of days is George Perez. George Perez would be, I guess, celebrating a birthday on June 9th. So we'll be sure to do something in the Captain America Comic Book Fans Facebook group to kind of give a tribute to
Sure.
George.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my George Perez story with the first time I met him?
I don't think so.
So it was at Dragon Con, which is in Atlanta, and I have it right here. So I went with John Sewell,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then Seth Talley, who was on the show, when we had the comic guys on the show, and we went to Dragon Con, and one of the things I'm a big George Perez fan, and I was like, oh man, I got to get a sketch. I got to get a sketch of Robin, Teen Titans, and I want to get Starfire. I want to get them all. And he was in a line at a booth for, I want to say it was the uh, comic book. Was it the Legal Defense Fund? Or the one that helps creators that are retired in need. And so this was, and you just had to make a donation. This was in 2009, and so George Perez was like, for every, I don't know, like $50 donation, I'll do the sketch. And maybe I'm getting it wrong. Maybe it wasn't $50, but I think it was. And so I went up to him. I was like second person in line. And I said, I would love to get a Robin and a Starfire. And here's $100 donation. And he was like, no problem. So he went and did that. And then so I actually have pictures of him drawing in my sketchbook. So here's pictures of George,
Uh-huh.
drawing as he's going along, and I'm giddy like a little schoolgirl,
Uh-huh.
right? Like John will probably attest to this, that he's never seen me like that, like all excited before, because this was one of my favorite books as a young and mid-teen, and here is George Perez drawing Robin and Starfire for me. It was absolutely amazing. And so this is the final piece right
Uh-huh.
here,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And the story gets better.
Okay.
Okay. So I go into in Dragon Con, I'm so excited about this. So excited. And I go up, I can't wait to show it to other people. And I go up to an artist who I know. His name is Cully Hamner. Super nice guy. He actually had done a signing in my first comic book store back in like 1992. And I go up to him and I show this to him. And I was like, man, I'm beaming. I'm like, I'm so excited about this. George Perez did a Robin and a Starfire, and I have it. And he goes, my favorite thing about this is the expression on Robin's face. He goes, he's got that, yeah, I'm hitting that face.
Yeah. I was going to comment on that sort of side eye he's got going on there. Yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
Anyway, yeah, God bless you, George Perez. We do miss you.
A true talent. So hey Rick, let's not keep Joe waiting too long in the green room. He may be running out of M&Ms back there, so maybe we should invite him in.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? And I didn't stock it with donuts. That was my bad. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get Joe on the show.
All right.
Our guest today, Joe Caramagna, is writer of comics, graphic novels, children's books, and games. Joe's works include writing Ultimate Spider-Man, Avengers Assemble, and Guardians of the Galaxy based on the animated series on Disney XD. Avengers Assemble, short stories for Disney publications. The Amazing Spider-Man series of young reader novels. Disney's Frozen series for Dark Horse, DuckTales, and Disney's Big Hero 6 series for IDW, and Zootopia comic shorts for various Disney publications, and many more. However, Cap fans will probably know him as the letterer of the current Captain America series by J. Michael Straczynski, and the last Cap series, Sentinel of Liberty. Oh, yeah, and Volume 9 and Volume 7. Oh, yeah, and Volume 6 and Volume 5 by Ed Brubaker. As well as the writer of the Taco Bell Captain America comic, which can't wait to talk about that. We're very excited to have Joe Caramagna join us today. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And hearing that very, very long list of credits makes me realize how old I am now. So thank you very much for that. It's so funny because I've been doing this for a very long time, as the long list of credits shows. But I still feel like I'm kind of new, which is weird. So, but I'm definitely not new. I just feel that way. But
yeah,
go on.
No, listen. When I was looking, because I've always known you as a letterer, and then when we had Scott Koblish on the show, talking about the Taco Bell, and we saw your name writing. It was the first time I had seen your name associated as a writer, and so then when I went and did the research and I looked and was like, wow, look at this laundry list. But yeah, and we can't wait to talk about that. But before we do, I see in your social handles that you have this love for donuts. In fact, I think on Twitter, right? What is it that you say? You're known as that donut guy. Like that's the very first thing in front of everything else. And considering that the National Donut Day is just a couple days away, I'm fascinated. I want to know why you mention donuts so much, and what is your Mount Rushmore of donuts?
Oh boy! All right, let me go. Let me go back. I won't start with the Mount Rushmore part. Let me go back to my bio saying that donut guy. I added that fairly recently, maybe within the past year or longer. I don't remember when, because I was on the Drew Barrymore Show for not comic related reasons, but donut related reasons. So I started seeing my name pop up in tweets that had nothing to do with my work in comics at all. It was about donuts and the Drew Barrymore Show. So I put it in my bio. Yeah, that donut guy. Plus, I make comic books and graphic novels for a living also. So I don't know where the donut thing really started. One of my first memories is, it might be, me harkening back to my childhood, because one of my first memories is that I used to go to a flea market in Elmwood Park, New Jersey, where I grew up. And that's where I got a lot of my very first comic books. Old stuff from like the 70s. It wasn't the 70s, it was the 80s, but I used to buy old comics from, just people that were set up there on tables. And I remember very, very clearly that they had this donut stand in the flea market. And there was a guy with this big donut machine in front of him, and he would scoop dough into the hot oil, and you could watch the donuts like travel along this greasy river and slowly get cooked. And then they had this automatic flipper that looked like a hand with fingers that would just like flip the donuts over as they passed by, and it would cook the other side. And I would stand there and just stare at this thing, because I was I was in awe of this, like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's a magical donut machine. The guy's just scooping dough. He's not doing anything. And then they would take the donuts out of the grease and put them in a paper bag that had a powdered sugar in it. And they would just shake it up and hand it to you. And you'd have this big cloud of powdered sugar around your face while you're opening the bag and taking out the warm donuts. So that's like one of my earliest memories that I have. And it's kind of related to comics. So the two things probably go together. That's probably one of the reasons why I love donuts so much. But I
But
guess
how did you get on the Drew Barry
Yeah,
Show?
I mean, yeah, you can't just like leave that out there.
Yeah, you're bearing the lead here.
I mean, it's a long story. If you want, I'll tell it from the beginning.
Yes, we want it.
Okay. Well, it's all related. It's all related though, because my love for donuts brought me to, when I was doing the con circuit, I did so many Wizard World shows over the years, and there was a period of time of a couple of years where I did a lot of Wizard World shows, like all over the country. So everywhere I went, I would look up two things. I would look up a donut shop, and I would look up the local Ronald McDonald House. The Ronald McDonald House was, again, it all ties together. So bear with me, the audience, bear with me for a minute. See, when my daughter was born, she had some complications at birth, and her first month of life was spent in the hospital, in the NICU, the intensive care unit. So my wife and I practically lived at the hospital in that month, the first month of her life, and we were lucky enough that we lived kind of close to our house was kind of close to the hospital, so we could go back and forth and shower and eat and whatever we needed to do and come back. And I saw that there were all these families that they were practically, like, when I say my wife and I were living there, we weren't actually, but other families were there, like sleeping in chairs that were pushed together, because they came from farther distances and they couldn't go back and forth to their house. So they basically slept in the waiting room. And my daughter was fine. Everything worked out. She ended up getting better. We went home, and then it was years later that I found out what the Ronald McDonald House Charities actually does, and that's to provide a home away from home for families that have to travel long distances to receive treatment for their seriously ill child. And once I heard that really struck a chord with me from my own personal experience. So when I would travel with the Wizard World shows, I never charge for anything at shows. I never charge for autographs or anything like that. What I do is I give things away in exchange for donations to the Ronald McDonald House. And I keep a Ronald McDonald House change box on my table, and people just stuff bills in there and stuff, change, and, sometimes like even 20s, they'll shove it in the box, and then I'll go deliver it to the house that's local to the convention where I am. So I always look up the local Ronald McDonald House Charities, and I always look up the local donut shop, because it's a cheap breakfast to get a donut and a coffee when you're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I was exposed to so many different mom and pop donut shops all over the country. And I guess I sort of became somewhat of a connoisseur from that experience. So fast forward, if you want to know the Drew Barrymore story, um, it became a thing that, I started talking about all these donuts I was getting. And so people started bringing me donuts to shows. Um, their local donuts. Have you ever had like this shop? And I'm like, no, I've never been there. And they would bring it to me at the show. And my joke is bring me treats and I'll pay back in comics. So they bring me some stuff and I'll give them some free comics. And when the pandemic came along and everything was shut down, there were no Comic Cons or anything going on. I saw that Krispy Kreme was giving away free donuts every day if you brought your vaccination card to prove that you got the COVID vaccine.
Hmm.
So um, one day I took my little vaccine card and I walked over to Krispy Kreme that had just opened near my house, a mile away from me. And I got my free donut. Then I went back the next day, and then I went back again the next day. And then before I knew it, I was like 13 days in. I just kept walking to Krispy Kreme to get a free donut. And I thought to myself, and people were having fun with it online because, I'm that donut guy. So people were tweeting me like, Joe, how many did you get? How many days are you up to now? And I wanted to do something good with it. So I decided that for every free donut I got, I would donate the money that I saved to the Ronald McDonald House in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is where the Krispy Kreme headquarters is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
nice.
like Krispy Kreme was giving me a free donut and I was like paying it forward, well, I guess paying it back to their community to help out their local Ronald McDonald House. And then I would go online and I would ask my followers, say, hey, anybody want to match, the money that I donated this week? It was about $6. Anyone want to match the $6? And people started matching it. And I would put the link out there and they would throw money their way. And by the end of it, and by the end, I mean, they told us no more free donuts. We're stopping this. You can't come back anymore. I went and got 202 free donuts over the course of 230 days, I think it was.
Mhm.
And we raised about $3,000.
Wow.
That's nice.
Yeah, for the just from people matching my donut walks. And I was featured in the New York Times because a reporter just happened to see what I was doing. And then a producer from the Drew Barrymore Show called me and asked me if I want to be on the show to talk about what I was doing. And I mean, I said no at first because I didn't want to be on TV. I had no interest in it. It was over. I donated the money, I raised money, whatever. And my wife said, "What are you, stupid? Like, they probably want to give you something or give the Ronald McDonald House something. Like, you gotta do it." So they called me back again because they asked me to please think about it because we want you on the show. So I said yes, and I went and did the show, and they donated an additional $10,000 to the Ronald McDonald House. So
That's great. That's
it was very cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
No.
And they gave me a massage chair, which I have and my son mostly uses. But it was cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's a
an
great
awesome
story. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very long. I'm sorry.
No,
But
no.
I had to get there. I had to get there since you asked about the Drew Barrymore Show. But that's why I put that donut guy in my bio.
All right.
It's all making sense now. It's all making, other
Yeah,
than
it's a
the
long
fact that,
story.
what doesn't make any sense? You look very thin and fit.
Yes.
Where are the
Listen.
donuts going?
I figured out that I was burning 2 more calories than were actually in the one free donut I got every day because it's just one original glazed donut. So walking to Krispy Kreme, getting a free donut, and walking back was actually good for me. I'm gonna stand by that. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and no doctor has told me that it's good for me, but I'm gonna stand by that and say that was good for me. It was good for my health.
What about all these conventions where you go and then they load you up with treats and donuts and stuff like that? I mean, doesn't that make for a hard trip back?
Yeah, I'm usually in a sugar coma when I come home.
Yeah.
It takes me a little while to recover, but it's great. It's a lot of fun. People have fun with it, and it's not just donuts. People bring me candy bars because I love candy. Also, I'm always talking about candy. Um, and it's cool because they try to bring me stuff that maybe I've never heard of or more regional things, and I get to try all sorts of stuff, and it's a fun way to connect with people too.
All right. So what is your Mount Rushmore? By the way, if you never see a single glazed donut again in your life, will you be okay? Or did that not beat that out of you?
Oh no, I have actually a box of Krispy Kremes upstairs right now because they have the new Dolly Parton donuts promotion going on, and so we went to Krispy Kreme and got a box yesterday. So I'm always happy to eat any kind of donut, and I get notifications on my Apple Watch every day when the original glazed are warm at Krispy Kreme. Because Krispy Kreme they have that red light that they turn on when the
Right.
donuts are warm. Yeah, I get notified on my Apple Watch. It goes off in the morning
Whoa, that's some
to let me
dedication
know that
right
the
there.
donuts.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
And now they all obviously the people at Krispy Kreme know me. I went in 202 times, almost in a row. So they're always giving me free stuff too whenever I walk in.
That's great. Great.
But the Mount Rushmore. Oh, sorry. Go
no,
ahead,
go ahead.
Bob.
Go ahead, Joe. No, I got to hear the Mount Rushmore.
Well, it's hard to say. I really don't have a Mount Rushmore because my experience of going to all these different donut shops, I realized that there's a donut that I might love from one place that another place doesn't make as good.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to say, and I'm very bad at ranking things as well. Like I have about 25 movies that are in my top 5, so it's very hard to say which donuts would be on my Mount Rushmore. So I like them all.
All right. Very political
Yeah.
answer there. All right.
Hey, I don't know if have you checked out the PBS movie, the documentary, the Donut King, Joe? Have you heard of that?
That's the one with the donuts in LA, right? With
Well,
the
it's
Cambodian.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Have you seen
Yeah,
that?
I've seen it.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I was telling Rick about that just the other day. What a fascinating documentary that was. And of course, I grew up in that era, the late 1970s, early 1980s, when all those refugees were coming over and opening up donut shops, and they were opening them up in Massachusetts, where I grew up as well. And so most of the
Okay.
independent donut shops there, even today, are all run by Cambodian families as a legacy of
Oh yeah.
Ted's.
And there are a lot of donut shops in Massachusetts.
There
They're
are
great ones. Great
Yeah.
ones. I do think that Connecticut is the absolute queen of donuts. They have the best donut shops, I think, per capita in Connecticut.
In
I'm
Connecticut.
standing by that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Road trip.
Never had a bad donut in Connecticut.
All right. So hey, before we get into your current comic work and questions from our listeners, maybe you could tell us a bit about how you broke into comics, how you got that internship at Marvel after your time at the Kubert School, and maybe just give us a little sense of like where this journey began.
Well, I guess I've always wanted to be a comic book artist. I always wanted to be a penciler. I wanted to be Todd McFarlane when I was a kid. That was the Todd McFarlane Spider-Mans weren't my first comics, but those were the comics that made me want to make comics. And so I did. I used to make comics and make photocopies of them and try to sell them at my middle school. So that's where it all started. But then later on, when I went to the Kubert School, I realized that the competition to be a comic book artist is really fierce. Um, here I thought, hey, I'm, class artist in the yearbook, right? Uh, my future's bright. I'm going to be the next Todd McFarlane. And then you go to a school where every single person was the best artist in their yearbook.
Yeah.
And it's very humbling. And you see the talent and you're like, wow, these people are pretty great. Um, but I pretty much left myself no plan B. So I had to stick it out, and I decided to lean into other things that they were teaching, because the Kubert School is really great that they make sure you know how to do everything. And that was Joe Kubert's philosophy. Because if you know how to do everything, then you can do everything yourself, and you don't have to give up work to somebody else. You can be in total control of your projects and do everything soup to nuts, like on your own. So I leaned into the other stuff that I was pretty good at. Like I was a pretty good writer. So I really took to writing my own scripts for me to draw, which on occasion we had to do as part of our assignments. They told us to write our own script and then draw the pages from that script. But I really took it seriously. I wasn't just writing like a chase scene for 5 pages. Like I tried to give it some structure and have a real story with real characters, real three-dimensional characters and stuff. So I leaned into that part of it. I really leaned into the inking. I was a pretty good inker. And I guess I was a pretty decent letterer. I always had pretty good penmanship, I guess. But comic book lettering was never something I really considered as a career. But I had a really great lettering instructor at the Kubert School named Hy Eisman. I don't know if you know Hy Eisman. He was a cartoonist, did a lot of comic strips. And I was not aware, but apparently Hy Eisman put me on a short list of candidates to be a Marvel Comics intern because they had come to the school looking for letterers that they could train because they were starting an in-house lettering department. Instead of outsourcing it, they wanted everything under their roof. And I was surprised to find out I was on the list. And then I went and interviewed and was surprised that I got the internship. And that's where I guess it took off because, see, at the Kubert School, when I said it was very humbling, you see all these people that were class artists. Like I learned a very big life lesson right there because, like I said, I had no plan B. So it's not like I could do something else. I decided I was going to make comics, but there's a big difference between having a goal and having a passion. And if you're too focused on your goal, it's very easy to get down on yourself and want to quit and just be done with everything. But if you lean into your passion, like I realized that I wanted to be a comic book artist, but my passion was making comics. And I found the same satisfaction that I got from penciling my comics when I did the other things. And so if you follow your passion instead of following a goal, you'll find the place where you actually belong. You'll find where you fit. And that wasn't for me. Where I fit was not a comic book penciler, but as that long list of credits show that what you read off in the beginning shows, that I definitely found a spot, and I found out where I belonged. And it all came from being an intern at Marvel and meeting all the people that I met. I was just telling my buddy the other day, my first day as a Marvel intern, I met Larry Hama,
Oh, wow.
who just happened to be in the office that day. And so you just meet all these different people, and I just wanted to be there. I didn't care if it was for lettering or for what. Like ever since I was a kid, I just wanted to be in that room.
Right.
And back then when I started, it was in the Marvel bullpen, and I worked right outside of John Romita Sr.'s office. Like that's where I wanted to be. And I was there when I didn't have to be. I was there for longer hours than I had to be. I ate lunch at my desk because I didn't want to leave. That's where I wanted to be. So I was going to do whatever it took to stay there and advance my career from there. So that's where it started. Like a few years later, after my internship, I met Chris Eliopoulos from Virtual Calligraphy, and he hired me, and I've been working with him ever since.
Yeah, that's some great insight as far as the difference between a passion and a goal. I mean, and you got that at a pretty young age too. And what year was this that you started your internship at Marvel?
It was 1999, summer of '99. It was my third year at the second. Wait, it was after my second year at the Kubert School. So I interned there summer of '99. They asked me to stay on in the fall. Then they asked me to stay on in the spring. And then I stayed on for the following summer. So I interned for a very long time. 4 semesters, basically, 4 college semesters.
That's a long internship. Hey, yeah,
Yeah, it was quite long.
my dad was a draftsman, and he had the most precise handwriting I've ever seen. It made it really, really hard to forge notes when I was in high school because I couldn't duplicate it. Even today, like I can't even read my own printing. It's very
Sure,
difficult.
yeah.
So I think a lot of people underestimate like the challenge or the skill that it takes to do the sort of work that you do. And you mentioned the fact that at the Kubert School, you were trained in lettering among other skills.
Right.
And I imagine that over the course of a career, there's additional training that goes in. It just doesn't. It's not something. Maybe you're born with a particular skill, but you have to enhance it over time. And I would think, looking back at your early work and looking at your current work, there's probably, just like any artist, there's a growth that is discernible. So, like, can you give us just a sense of the sort of training that goes into developing that skill set that you have developed over time?
It's funny because when I was training at the Kubert School, it's almost like learning how to write when you're a child. Like we literally had these printouts with dotted lines and everything to to teach us how to write
Right.
in a comic book looking font, to write clearly. And because certain letters that are next to each other, you have to make sure to show that separation and that everything is read clearly. The classic um, example, I guess, is when you have to letter the name Clint. You have to be very careful that the spacing is correct. So it is like teaching a
Bob,
child
can
how to
you
write.
explain that to me, please?
This is a family show.
It's a family show, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's basically what it was. Is like we learned like we did when we were kids. You just repetition and doing things over and over again. But um, as you can imagine, a lot of guys who are there to try to be Todd McFarlane, they don't really want to do that.
Right.
So I I took it very seriously, because, like I said, I didn't think once I saw the level of talent I was up against, I knew that I had to try to do my best in all areas. Um, and I really, I guess I took it seriously and worked hard at it. And what's funny is that my first day of my Marvel internship is the last day that I ever hand lettered anything. Um,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, I lettered third year in school my own assignments, but like I didn't need to anymore. Like I started doing digital lettering in my third year, um, because actually it's my first day of my internship. I showed up. They hand me paper. They hand me pens with the nibs on them. The ink pens. And they said, "Here, go, letter, fill this page with sound effects." I'm like, "Okay." I sat at a drafting table and I did a whole bunch of sound effects. I'm like, "Good. You're never gonna have to do that anymore. There's your computer. Go sit at it. We'll show you how to do all this lettering digitally." So that's where I learned. I learned at Marvel. They didn't teach us that at the school,
Wow.
and so yeah, and that's that's it. I haven't had to hand letter anything professionally. So
Wow. I didn't
yeah.
realize the transition from traditional, pencil and ink,
Hmm.
transition to digital so early on.
Yeah. That's I guess I was there when, like, at the tail end of the hand lettering. Like I was there for the transition, for the full
Mhm.
transition, I guess, because they were doing exclusively digital lettering when I was there. Um, but they did hire me based on my hand lettering samples.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So I guess they were looking for someone who knew how to do it by hand, but knowing that I wouldn't have to, if that makes sense. Because when you get it, like I said, with the spacing and everything,
Mhm.
when you get it, then you can do it digitally. You can make it look like, what you did by hand. Once you get it down, working with the Ames guide. I don't know if anyone knows what an Ames guide is. It's a little
Mhm.
plastic tool that letterers use to draw their lines to keep the spacing all proper. Um, it creates guidelines across the page. So you might actually see, if you look at old original art that's hand lettered, you might actually see some Ames guide lines very faint, like around the letters.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like just the
you
yeah,
see the lines. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Those are from an Ames guide most likely.
Do
So
Yeah, it's interesting because I collect original art, and so uh there's a point where the art no longer has word balloons on it. And I you know, I I just assumed, the reason for that, but I guess the digital lettering happened early 2000s. Is that fair to say?
I would say late 90s. I think
Okay.
Comicraft was doing a lot of work in the late 90s.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I think I have a couple of stuff from the last 20 years that maybe has some sound effects on them,
Hmm.
that are on the page. So that's kind of cool. Um, Interesting. So we do have a few questions that our patrons have sent in that we like to kind of sprinkle as we go along. And one of our listeners, Grant Ball, asks, how much collaboration is there between the letterer of a story and the writer and artist? Like, do you get any influence on the story, or is everything pretty much finalized by the time it comes to you?
That largely depends on the other creators that are assigned to the book. It depends on the writer and the artist. Like for example, right now, I really have no relationship at all when it comes to working on Cap with JMS. I don't talk to Straczynski at all. We don't exchange emails, which is not, it's not like a criticism of Joe, obviously. It's just the way it is, different. It all depends on who you're working with. But it was very different when I was working with Ed Brubaker, and especially different when I was lettering the Cap series with Mark Waid and Chris Somney.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mark and Chris always included me in everything. They really made sure that I felt like I was part of the team, and um, we worked in tandem. Like they always say, "Oh, like this is our team." They wouldn't say like Mark would never say like, "Oh, Chris and I." He would always say like our team, and he would include me in a lot of things where even I was like, what am I doing here? I don't need to be here. But Mark always made sure that he was like showing some respect for what I added to the series, which is great. Um, and again, that doesn't mean that JMS isn't showing me any respect at all. He's
Sure. Yeah.
he's great. He's terrific. It's just different relationship. Like I'm actually when I write, I'm similar to Straczynski, where I don't usually um, collaborate with everybody at first. I turn in the script and then I'm like, okay, whatever you guys need to do to translate this is fine. But I don't bring them in early. I need to be like the sole person doing stuff, and then I seek input afterwards. And but yeah, and Ed Brubaker too would he would include me in a lot of things, not to the level of like Mark Waid, but I learned so much about how to write from working with Ed. And he wasn't teaching me. I just learned through observation. Like
Mm-hmm.
Ed was, he's such a great writer. And I get to see as the letterer, I don't know if it's true for most lettering situations, but I get to see a lot of the editorial notes that go back to the writer. Um, as I letter the book, and a lot of times then other people give it a read and they give notes like, to the writer. In this case was Brubaker. And
And Tom
like you
Brevoort,
see that
right?
Tom Brevoort, yeah, is a lot of times the one giving the notes, and who's also he knows everything about this business. He knows how to make these comics. Like he's got a ton of knowledge as well. So just seeing them go back and forth, like I learned so much that I still apply today. And I also learned from Mark Waid as well from that experience. But Mark was always more encouraging me. It's like, Joe, you need to be writing more. You need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. Keep it up. I read that thing you wrote, and it was great. Um, so I guess that's where I was able to make a transition over to writing more because of those experiences collaborating. So it doesn't always happen, but when it happens, it's great. And it just so happens that I've been able to collaborate with some of the best of all time. So I'm really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking of the Captain America writers alone, absolutely. You've
Yeah.
had, some amazing. We've had Mark on the show, and he is a brilliant writer. And I certainly, I mean, I could go on and on about, his with Ron Garney,
Yeah.
that stuff,
Right.
or the Man Out of Time miniseries, or the stuff with Samney. Loved his work. And I guess over the years, maybe this has changed, right? Because the other question that comes up with lettering, and by the way, you're the first letterer we've had on the show, right? We've had editors and writers
Yay.
and pencilers and inkers and colorists. So we have so many lettering questions. So I apologize, but as a
No, please.
writer, as a writer, um, now that you've written more versus early on, you probably have a different opinion. But what happens when the writer provides too much dialogue, to fit into a panel? Maybe what you did previously versus maybe what you think now as someone who writes more. Do
Right.
you let the writer know, or do you find a way to make it work?
No, you have to make it work. We're on such tight schedules. I don't know if anyone really appreciates it. Probably they think we have so much time to put these books out. We don't at all. And I have no time at all to turn the lettering around. So I wouldn't even have time to uh, even send the writer a note and say, "Hey, there's a lot of dialogue here. Can you cut this down?" Like that doesn't happen. I would never. By the time I heard back, or by the time they came up with a way to cut it down or separate it, it's too late. Like I need to finish that page. The deadlines are insane. The deadlines that we work under are crazy, and it takes a certain type to be able to crank out the volume under those circumstances. It's nuts. But you just make it work. Sometimes I split up balloons. Like a lot of times with JMS's balloons, I'm like, wow, he wrote an entire paragraph. That's one word balloon, and I just find a natural separation point and I split it off and I make its own balloon. Or you just get creative, break the panel border and do all kinds of things, weird balloon shapes, that look more like
Yeah,
something, a blob than a football.
I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't really think about asking you this, but I was reading this two-part story, 7 and 8, that with a different artist, but there's a point at the end of 8 where he's getting his fortune read, right? And um, you have to like change like the style of the lettering, right? So that part of it part of it has like a description of what's going on, right? And it might
Right.
say, or and then someone's talking, and then another is the calligraphy, right? That's written here by the person who's giving the fortune, and then you have uh, Cap thinking to himself. You have word balloons. Like there's all different kinds of styles going on here, and there is a lot of words, and you made it fit, which leads me to another question: is you know, my understanding is letterers get paid by the page, not by the word, and
That's correct.
so do you ever like hope for assignments with certain writers who are known for less dialogue, or or do you like a challenge of a Brian Michael Bendis?
See, I'm going to defend Brian for a second here.
Oh, by the way,
He's
I
very
love his writing. Love his
no, no,
writing.
for
Don't get me
sure, for
wrong.
sure. No, but he has a rep for being very wordy, a well-earned reputation, I might add. But the thing about working with guys like Brian and also Dan Slott, who write a lot of words and put a lot of dialogue in very small spaces, is that once it's done, once you letter it, it's done. Like Brian's not going to come back and say, you know what, I read it back and I'm not happy with it, so here I rewrote that panel. Like Brian's never going to do that. Like he locked it down and he's like, here it is. So I know that it's not going to change. I mean, with Brian, you have to deal with a lot of punctuation and spelling errors. That's a whole other issue. But sorry, Brian. but can't defend you too much. But yeah, like if it's a lot of dialogue, then and there's not many changes or many fixes that need to be made at the end, it's fine because once it's done, it's done. It's the same amount of time. Like it's no better to get a script that's very light on dialogue that then you have to re-letter parts of it. It's all the
Mm.
same amount of time. So yeah, and I'm a fan of Brian's work. So
All right.
it's
So,
cool to he also gets to work with some of the best artists. So that's always a lot of fun to letter a Brian Bendis comic.
well, you mentioned the punctuation and things like that. So that brings me to another question from one of our listeners, Mark Domeyer. And he says, as an English teacher, I wonder if there are times when you see a spelling or grammar error and you make the fix, or do you have to check with the writer or editor first before you make that fix?
Uh, again, we're dealing with such short amounts of time to do these things. So a lot of times I'll actually just make the fixes myself. Um, I've always been pretty good at like spelling and punctuation and grammar and stuff, even before working in comics. So I just go in and make the changes because when the editors when they send us the scripts, they're not looking they're more looking at the story when they're dealing with the writers. They're not looking for like spelling and punctuation because there's a whole proofreading department at Marvel that handles that afterwards. So in order for me to cut down on the amount of changes I'll have to make after the fact, I'll just go ahead and fix the errors for the most part. And then sometimes it's kind of annoying because an editor will say, "Oh no, they wanted a comma here or whatever, and can you change this before we submit it?" And I'm like, "No, because that's like I know that this is the correct version. Don't change it back to what the writer had just because that's what the writer had." This and then sometimes they're like, "No, no, put it back," and I put it back, and then proofreading will say, "Oh, can you take away this comma?" And I'm like, "See, I told you. I tried to save myself this step, and you made it even longer." So yeah, I do it all the time. I make fixes as I go along. I would have to because otherwise, after proofreading gets through it, they send me all these notes, and I just don't have a lot of time to deal with them. So it's almost like a survival technique.
I have to ask, in certain situations, the style of the lettering can differ. Like we just talked about, like the hand note versus, the calligraphy and so on. But also sometimes the language itself is different, right? So we may have an alien language, or maybe Asgardian speech, for example. Is there a library that you reference for the standard ones? And then for the new ones, do you make that up? And if so, has that been a standard for others to use?
Oh boy, this is hitting me in the soft spots here. This is something that I complain about all the time. We do have a library of things. We at VC we don't actually share a physical space together, but we work together and we're in communication all day. We have like a group chat going all day long every day, and we share these certain styles with each other. Like someone will say, what font do we use when Thor speaks in lowercase, upper lowercase, and it's not all caps? And someone will say, oh, that's this font. And like, okay. Or what's Venom's current word balloon look like? And then they'll share it with the group, and we all have to stick to, the house style of what Venom's speech looks like. Um, I try as much as possible to keep things on the straight and narrow without any special effects. There's certain things that are just unavoidable. They're ingrained. They've been done forever for the 20 something years. And that's like Thor's font. He speaks with an Asgardian font. You can't get away with using just the regular book font, dialogue font. You have to change it to Thor's font and things like that. But I try not to create new ones. And whenever anyone creates new ones, I say, do you really want to do that? Because now the rest of us are going to have to stick to that. And that makes for it's not just that it's difficult because it's more time consuming to do those special lettering effects, but you're opening yourself up to more errors that need to be fixed after the fact. Like if I use
Mm.
the wrong Venom balloon and the editor notices after I letter the whole thing, I have to change all of it throughout to like the proper Venom style. So I try not to create any new headaches for anybody else But in those instances, we do share them with each other. We do have a library. We do have like certain go-tos and things like that for very specific instances.
Joe, we often see you credited as VCs, Joe Caramagna. The VC bit refers to virtual calligraphy, the lettering studio founded by, as you mentioned earlier, Chris Iliopoulos. And they handle a lot of the lettering work for Marvel. Can you tell us a bit about the studio and sort of where it fits into the production process and what that relationship is like?
Well, VC, it started out as basically Marvel's in-house lettering department was cut, and they outsourced it to Chris, and he formed his own studio, and he hired people who lost their jobs in Marvel cutting the lettering department. So I ended up not working in-house at Marvel as a letterer. So otherwise I would have lost my job and then ended up right back where I am now. We don't share a physical space, like I said. We're not all together, even though half of us are in New Jersey. We're not all together, and we keep in contact through a group chat. And we do handle just about all of Marvel's lettering, and that's it. Like VC doesn't do anything outside of Marvel. I mean, each as individuals, yes, but not virtual calligraphy itself. And what was the other part of your question? What?
Well,
how we work together.
Yeah, well, how it fits into the overall production flow of where you are in that value chain, right? From soup to nuts in the process.
Well, basically, like I said, because we started out as the people who were once the in-house Marvel lettering department, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, we operate as the out-of-house in-house department, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Like we're here all day, every day during business hours, and we come in at the end of the process, after the book's all drawn and written, drawn and whatnot. And we do the lettering, and we also do all the pre-press stuff. And we do a lot of the ancillary stuff, like the recap pages, credits pages, mm-hmm. Next issue pages, letters pages. We handle, I would say, at least half of that stuff for all the books. And we're actually the ones that upload the final PDF to the printer. So we do operate like we're an in-house department, but we're not. And we're at the very end of the process.
Now, you said
which means, by the way, that when everyone's late in their stage of the process, we have less and less time available to do what we need to do to make sure that the book gets out on time.
Yeah. I completely understand and appreciate that, because I work in marketing. And so I work with the media team that deploys everything into market. So, you have the strategy, and then you have the creative, and then you have the approval process. And if all that gets delayed, it's the people at the end that feels the biggest crunch. So I feel your pain. I can understand where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why we're always, running around like our hair's on fire. If I had hair, it would be on fire.
I wouldn't know. So when you said VC, most of VC, or VC does most of Marvel, what titles are you currently on as the letterer? We know Captain America, but what else?
Let's see. I should have a list, actually, and I can give you a formal list. I just need to open it up and take a look at it. But obviously, Captain America. Captain America is one of the books I've been doing from the beginning. I've been lettering like every volume of Captain America pretty much since I started. My very first assignment for VC was actually Captain America. I want to say number 8 of
Ed Brubaker Volume 5. Yeah.
Yep. It was 2005. Right? Yep. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
that was back when I had my comic book store. I remember it very well.
Oh, there you go. See? So Amazing Spider-Man, which is the other book that I've been on forever. I'm closing in on.
You did over 100 issues of that, didn't you?
I'm closing in on 300 legacy issues of Amazing Spider-Man. which blows my mind. But that's because they publish it so often. If it came out once a month, I wouldn't be anywhere close to 300. But yeah, I'm very close. I'm about 12 issues away, I think, from 300 legacy issues, not including annuals and other miniseries and things. This is just according to the legacy numbering.
That's awesome.
So Amazing Spider-Man, I'm currently doing some Blood Hunt tie-ins. I can't tell you about that one. I'm doing Fantastic Four, which I've done for a while now. Invincible Iron Man. Iron Man has also been something I've worked on since like the beginning that I refuse to let go of. These are my favorites, you know, Captain America, Iron Man, Amazing Spider-Man. For a while, I was doing Uncanny X-Men for a very long time. I did Uncanny X-Men. I started when Chris Claremont was still writing it.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. I usually do most of the Ms. Marvel stuff. Sensational She-Hulk, Spectacular Spider-Man, Spider-Boy, the new Spider-Boy series. Lots of spider stuff. I'm currently doing Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin. Let's see, some Star Wars books, like Jango Fett, Darth Vader. I've been lettering maybe from the very beginning when they started publishing Star Wars comics. I'm still doing that. Superior Spider-Man. What else is on here? Let's see. I was doing, like I said, I was doing X-Men books. I was on X-Force and Uncanny for a long time. I recently lettered Uncle Scrooge and the Infinity Dime, #1. And that's all I can tell you about because I'm not sure that the others have been announced yet. So
that's
where we
that's
are.
a ton. That's a ton right there.
That's a busy week.
Not enough. I always want to do more.
I think we have like just two more questions about lettering, and one
Sure.
one is about sound effects. And it seems that this is like an opportunity for a letterer to be creative, right? Like they could do different things, right? Are the writers specific? Like, do they put in their boom with 4 O's, or do they write there's a loud explosion? Like, what's the direction you get?
Again, it depends on the writers themselves. Some of them love to be very specific. Some of them love to say, you know, just especially someone like Zeb Wells, who I've worked with, you know, for a while now. He'll say like, "Joe, give me a loud explosion here," and I'll just come up with something. Some of them like they're really long sound effects. Like Greg Pak loves to write these long sound effects, like I'm like, oh geez, like there's not enough room for this, Greg. Yeah, it all depends. My favorite sound effects are the ones that the artists draw themselves. Not only because it saves me time and I can letter pages faster, but I just love the way it looks. Like I loved working with Chris Somney because he would always do his own sound effects for the most part. Sometimes I would have to add a couple and try to make it look like Chris did it. But like that's my favorite because then it's like part of the art, and it's not just me like slapping a sound onto a page, you know, like it's more integrated into the art when the artist draws it. So I love that.
Okay, so we're saying I have this page from 700 by Samney.
Okay.
Obviously, there's really no dialogue or anything on here. The only
Sure.
sound effect is this little KAK cack. So that was probably Chris, not you, huh?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Chris did. And it's funny because Chris, early on, he said, like, Joe, like, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes. Would you mind if I like did my own sound effects? I'm like, oh God, I prefer it. Like, please do it.
I'll
Please.
buy
Like,
you a
it'll look,
donut.
yeah, it'll be more like there's a different look for when it's planned for than when it comes in after the fact, you know, like it looks like a more integrated part of the art, like it's a natural part of the art. Plus the ink line matches the ink line of whoever inked it. You know, in Chris's case, he inks his own pencil. So it just looks more natural. I like that so much better. And Ryan Stegman too. Ryan Stegman was like, would you mind if I drew my own sound effects? I'm like, oh, please, this is like the greatest day of my life. Please do, please. And plus, I love to look at it. The one thing I don't like is when editors come in afterwards and like, you know what, this panel here looks like it could use a sound effect too. And I'm like, okay, like Chris did 4 sound effects on this page, and now you want one that's going to look different from the rest, because I can't match exactly, because like I said, there's a specific ink line. Inkers have different lines. Some of them are a little rough, some of them are very smooth. Um, it does the same, when there's one that was done by me. So I try to make it look like the artist did it in those cases. But I always push back, and I'm like, do you really need a sound effect here? Like, if Chris doesn't think this needs it, I don't think it needs it. Like, don't force me to make this page look weird. Like, anything that makes the reader stop and say, huh, that looks a little weird. Like, why does this one look different? It's not good. Like, even if it makes the action in the panel more clear because there's a sound effect, it's never good to take the reader out of the story in that
That's a
way.
great point.
So
Yeah.
I hate doing stuff like that. So, and I'm very like conscious of readers not being pulled out of the story by something. Like, that's something I'm like, sometimes I overly police it, but I'm like, we're trying to immerse them in this world. Like, you don't need to do this. Like, let's not do that. Like, this monster doesn't need a crazy monstery font that's going to overshadow this great artwork. We don't really need that. Like, just, keep it simple and let the reader go. So, and sometimes it enhances, makes it better, but depends. All depends on the situation.
One last question on lettering, and this is from our listener, Matthew Glover. He asks, what is the hardest part of being a letterer for comics? And I can imagine you have many, many stories, and you certainly don't want to, pinpoint any particular people. Like, for instance, like if an artist, draws the first person speaking on the right rather than on the left, or,
Right.
what would you say is the biggest challenge? We've talked about
It's
some.
it's the schedule for sure. It's definitely the schedule, especially at VC, because we do all the Marvel books. We're basically it. So Marvel has a slate of books that need to be lettered every week, and it has to be handled by the 6 of us, or five. Wait, hold on, 5 of us, because Chris doesn't letter anything. Chris is the boss, but he doesn't letter any monthly books. It's 5 of us, I think. So we have to split it all up. So the books have to get done one way or the other. So a lot of times, if everyone's busy and can't take it, I'm like, I'll just do it, because I've like made it my life's work to figure out the most efficient way to do this. So, and I'm very regimented and very scheduled, and I can get a lot done in a short period of time. So yeah, it has to get done. It's not easy because you're going 100 miles an hour all day, every day. At least I am. I always have something waiting to be done. And so it's like, go, go, go. And that's the hardest part of it, is that we're on such a tight schedule. It's not like traditional book publishing where like, I have a book now that it's coming out in February. And I won't tell you what it is, but I can't tell you what it is. But we've been working on it for a very long time. Now, these Marvel comics, they come out, every month at least. I mentioned Amazing Spider-Man, that ships 3 times a month. So that has to get lettered. It can't get pushed back. You're messing everything up if one issue gets pushed back. So the schedule is really, really tough. And like I said, it takes a certain type to be able to maintain. And we get a little salty in our group chat sometimes with what we have to do and what we have to get done every day. But I love it. I see it as a challenge. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I love looking at my to-do list, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to get it done. Without boring you, there was a book that came up just last week, and there were complications with getting it done, and it was thrown on my plate at the last second. It was an oversized issue, way more than 20 pages. And we had a meeting at Marvel, and they're talking about how, we're going to have to figure something out because, it has to go on sale on this date. But if we push it back, it's going to screw up the whole schedule. And I just said, like, I raised my hand and said, I have it for you tomorrow. And they're like, what? How are you going to have it tomorrow? Like, you're working on all these things. I'm like, I'll do it. I'll have it for you tomorrow, and it'll avoid all these problems. Like, I can I can help you avoid all these problems by doing this, by getting this done. And I did. I got it. I turned it in the next morning. So,
Yeah, that's how you make
um,
yourself very, very valuable.
yeah, by being insane and being willing to take on more work than anyone else would ever want. But I love it. I love it. Not again. I don't want to bore you, but um, it's amazing. It's such a great feeling to wake up in the morning and look forward to going to work. Like that's rare from what I understand. I've seen like polls taken and surveys and stuff, and most people hate their jobs. Um, I absolutely love it. I don't want to do anything else ever. So anything that I can do to keep it going, anything to be helpful, like I'm happy to do it. I just love coming to work every day.
Mm.
Like it's such a great, it's amazing. Like I said, I've wanted to make comics since I was a little kid. So, and I actually get to be here, and that is just, it's never lost on me. Like it always blows me away the type of things that I get to do on a daily basis, and the type of meetings that we have that probably sound so ridiculous to the normies, because we talk about such crazy things. We debate such weird things, but I wouldn't want to do anything else. Like this is just, it's really special. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Well, speaking
So
of,
I don't mind the
well,
schedule.
all right, another big challenge that you were
Yeah.
faced with, right? I got to ask about the 2009 Captain America Taco Bell giveaway,
Oh, here
which
it is.
we
Here we
covered
go.
it. Yeah, we covered it in episode 138.
Panel by
Yep.
panel,
Panel
Joe.
by
If you ever want
panel.
Yeah.
to,
I heard it. I
oh,
heard
you
it.
did. Okay.
Oh, I did. I did.
Oh, you did? All right, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And of
Oh,
course, the
yeah.
issue was inked and penciled by Scott Koblish, who we actually interviewed on the show in episode
One of my
139.
favorite people, by the way. One of
He's
my
a,
favorite people in the business. Absolutely. I'm a fan of his work, and I'm an even bigger fan of the guy. He's just top notch, high quality guy right there.
That's good to know. Well, we know that
Yeah.
issue was both written and lettered by you. And I got to ask you how your participation came about in that promotional giveaway.
Let's see. That was pretty early on in my writing career. I think my first Marvel credit was 2007, my first writing credit. I wrote a Fantastic Four short story, um, probably because I was the only freelancer that they were able to get on the phone on a Friday night. Um, the editor, Nate Cosby, needed a script for Monday. I guess a writer flaked out on him or something. He didn't deliver it. And he's like, I need a script by Monday. And it was Friday night. And without really thinking about it, I said, yes, I can do it. Of course I can. And I didn't know how to do that. I couldn't do it. I don't know. I made it up because I wanted a writing gig and I wanted to show what I could do. And I did it. I had a script, full script that I was able to turn in Monday morning. And so Nate, a little out of time, started throwing me some work here and there. And Nate's the one who edited the Captain America Taco Bell book. Um, so it came up, and he asked me if I wanted to do it. And I'm just, I'll do anything. Like I said, I love my job. I'll do anything. So yeah, of course, I'm going to do it. Plus, I figured that since they were selling it at Taco Bell, it would be seen by so many people who don't normally buy comics.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really cool that I could be someone who could maybe help someone get into comic books and Captain America. So yeah, I jumped at it, and it wasn't easy, very difficult job, but that's how it came about.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
So I we have it here, right? So and
Oh,
please pardon this fanboy question, but it did come up when we were
sure.
covering the story panel by panel. And so we're gonna get into the fanboy geeking part now. And it's how easily Captain America was captured with the knockout gas in his apartment.
Yeah.
Now, it seems Steve would have known that he was being followed and he would have found a way to escaping the gas. So, can you tell all the Cap fans listening right now that was just Steve luring them into a false sense of security, and he was playing possum to get to the leader, right?
Well, let me tell you something. If Batman 66 taught me anything, it's that the most dangerous thing a superhero can encounter is knockout gas. All right. So don't downplay the noxious effects of the knockout gas.
Yeah.
Because that's serious stuff.
That is.
Number two, a worldwide terrorist organization can easily infiltrate a Brooklyn apartment building. That's number two. And I know it's Captain America, but I also had a story to tell in a very short amount of pages, and I needed to move the story along.
Well, speaking of which,
got to get to the action in those short stories. I don't remember how many pages that story was, but it was very, very
it
short.
was short. It was short. Well,
right.
And also we seem to have missed out on something in a very short period of time, because maybe you could fill in the gap on how he went from civilian clothes when succumbing to the gas into tied up in his Captain America garb. like
I don't remember the full details of the story. It's been a very long time.
Okay.
I've done a lot of books since then, but were they forcing him to do like a video?
Yes. Yes. So they wanted him in his Captain America
They wanted
garb.
him in his Captain America costume. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Did they
Naturally.
dress
So they
him?
took it out of his closet, they ironed it. They put it on him.
Yeah.
It looked good in the video.
These are the things fanboys think about, but again, also you're writing for an audience too, right? Like you mentioned that this is going to be a lot of, and this was a giveaway kids meals, right? So obviously the target audience was smaller kids, not teenagers, not young adults or anything like that typically. And so you're writing for that audience, and also you have that responsibility that this could be the first comic that they've ever had, or the first comic about Captain America.
Yeah, definitely. And you definitely want to get to Captain America in the costume. So just to pull the curtain back a little bit. So that's why you make certain choices that you make, because like Joe Kubert used to say, like nobody wants to see Wolverine, doing his laundry. Like you got to get to it.
Unless you're Brian Michael Bendis, then he'll talk
nowadays
about
a lot
it.
of fans do want to see Wolverine doing his laundry, which I find fascinating. But back then, when writing for a general audience and not the hardcore Wednesday Warriors, you don't want to show Captain America, putting on his costume and doing stuff. You want to cut to it however you can, however quickly you can, and that's why they knock them out and set them up in front of a camera, and there you go. We got to get to the good stuff.
Speaking of writing all ages, a good portion of your comic writing is writing all ages show adaptations. Can you take us through that process?
That was a very unique process because I was literally adapting episodes of the shows for comics. So each 22-minute episode had to be turned into a 20-page, or was I working with 22? I don't remember what the page count was at the time, probably 20. I had to turn it into a 20-page comic. And as you can imagine, it doesn't really translate 1 minute to one page. That's not really the way it works, especially when you're doing action scenes, because sometimes it takes multiple panels to show a certain action that could take a second on screen. So to take you through the process of doing it, like the actual process of doing it, the workflow, they would send me the episode, a video of it, and I actually turned it into a comic at the end of the process with very little interference from anyone in between. It was me doing the entire thing. So they would send me the episode and I would turn in the comic, the finished comic. And that's how it went. So a lot of times, because a lot of stuff had to be cut, I had to fully rewrite a lot of things or add things that weren't in the episode, like a voiceover, narration and stuff that I would just write on my own. So they're not actually direct adaptations from the script, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but all
totally
the
makes
artwork,
sense.
all the artwork in those books were screen grabs from the actual episode. They're frames from the show. So we didn't have an artist. So it was me. I was the artist. I was just selecting which frames to use, and then I would arrange it into panels to make it look like someone drew it, like a traditional comic book page. I didn't want to do a grid because that's not how comics are made anymore. You know, like that's old fashioned kind of old school stuff. Like the Kirby stuff would be like a, 9-panel grid. So I had to make it look like a modern day comic book looks. So I had to design these pages, and that was very difficult, being limited to just the panels. And there were instances where it just didn't work, and I would have to get creative and flip things and all that. So it was a very difficult gig. It was a fun gig. I loved doing it. I wish I could do more of that. That was cool. Just because I like a good challenge. And it worked out in the end, because I think that the comics turned out really great. Some of them, like there was one that was a Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man issue, and it was the episode with Deadpool. And we had a lot of fun with that, where I don't know if I used any of the actual dialogue. I just like rewrote everything. And it was cool because the producers and writers of the show were fully on board with everything I was doing. So I had a good relationship with them too. Like Kevin Burke and and Doc Wyatt and them. So we had a great time doing that. I really loved it. And they were awesome. They're like, yeah, this is great. Oh, I can't believe you figured out a way to turn this episode into a 20-page comic. That's insane. So we had a lot of fun with it. It was but like I said, very difficult, very labor intensive, not easy to do. But I'm very happy with the way they all turned out.
Yeah, and there, as somebody who used to own a comic book store, I could tell you, those were important to new young audiences that come into the store, because, they
Yeah,
they gravitate towards what's familiar. And so
right.
seeing something that they had seen on TV or a movie or something like that, and there was an adaptation to it, it was like an easy buy-in for them. And then as they got interested in the character more, you could direct them to some other things as well. So, they
Right.
were smart on business decision too.
Yeah. And one of my absolute favorite things about doing that gig were that I would get letters from kids saying like, "Oh, I love this and I love that." So I started to actually interact and ask for, I would issue Avengers ID cards. I don't know if you remember this, in
Oh,
the back
yeah,
of the
it's
issue, because kids were sending in pictures of, parents were sending pictures of their kids in superhero costumes and stuff. So they would send me all the mail, and I would look at it. I'm like, this is awesome. And what I started doing was I issued Avengers ID cards in the back letters page that they could cut out, and it was their picture with their like name and like their all the
that's
information
awesome.
that they gave me about themselves and stuff. And
I'm
I
sure
had this
they
whole thing
held on
where
to those. Yeah.
oh yeah, I adopted a persona.
Oh,
I
was
was
she like an agent of Shield or something like that?
Yeah, I was an agent of Shield, and I would always complain about Agent Coulson, like, oh, he's off doing in Hollywood again. Oh, I'm here picking up his slack at work. And it was a whole fun thing that I think after a while made a lot of the people at Marvel nervous, so we stopped doing it. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah, like one
Stop
time
reaching out to the small children, Joe.
no, one time it was like an issue that was coming out around Halloween, and I said something like I teased like, oh, I'm gonna bring candy to your neighborhood or whatever. And I said, oh, we're running behind schedule. So, run outside and I'll drop candy from the helicarrier as I'm passing by. And they're like, Joe, you can't tell kids to go outside without their parents' permission. They can't, you can't be doing stuff like that. Like, stop interacting with the kids like that, please. And then we just stopped doing it after a while, but because I was creating problems. But the kids loved it because they just kept sending in more letters, and everyone wanted to get printed in the back, So like
Yeah.
sending me all kinds of pictures and dressed as the Hulk and all that stuff. It was so much fun. It was really great to see that so many kids are actually getting into these characters from the shows, which is the coolest part of all of it.
Well, what is, besides the I don't know, 15 titles that you mentioned that you're currently lettering, what else is keeping you busy in 2024? Is there any projects coming up that you can talk about?
Not quite yet. I do have a pretty big announcement for some graphic novels that I have coming out.
Now,
Hopefully
are
we'll hear about
these
that soon, very
through
soon.
Marvel or they're through something else?
No, outside of Marvel. Yeah, not anything related to Marvel superheroes or Marvel at all. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of graphic novel writing for like HarperCollins and Disney Hyperion over the past few years. So I have some of my own stuff coming out, and that's it's very exciting. So
Anything
as soon as
to
I can talk about it, I will let you know. But it'll be on my socials if you see it. So.
anything to do with Wyatt Earp?
Oh, no, but I wish, right? Like, so I'm glad. Have you seen those?
I haven't
Because
read them, but I know of them, and
yeah,
yes,
Scott
I know there was
worked on
something.
those too. Scott was my first choice to do that, and he's like, "Oh, I don't really have time. I have this and this," and I wouldn't leave him alone about it. I'm like, "No, you have to do it," because I'm such a fan of his work, and we had worked together lots of times before. Like I wrote a series of Spider-Man young reader novels that I wrote the novel and I wrote like a comic book version of the novel. And Scott was the artist on the comics versions of those. So, well, not for all of them. Then Tim Seeley did a couple too.
Oh, he's
Little
great
bit of
too. Yeah,
trivia there. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So Scott was. I love working with Scott. I'm such a big fan. He can draw anything, and just he has the ability that a lot of artists don't have. And these are the guys that are my favorites, like Chris Samney and guys like that. That he can take, like, I don't want to insult him by saying simple, but he could take a simple drawing and add so much subtlety to it. Like in the expressions, like his acting in his drawing is phenomenal. And that's what I love. I really wanted that for the Wyatt Earp book. And I wish I could have done more. I had 5 planned and we only did 3 of them. And they're available on Amazon if anyone wants to look them up. They're digital, available on Amazon. I think they're pretty cheap, like 99 cents each or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, that's less than a donut.
It's less than a donut, sure.
Yeah. And as far as you said, following you on social media, best platforms to follow you to keep in touch.
Nowadays, I want to say Instagram. I used to be such a huge fan of the Twitter, but I just can't use that anymore. It's turned so terrible. And a lot of the people I interacted with ended up leaving, so it's not the same playground it used to be back years ago. I was on there every day, multiple times a day, interacting with people. It was so great, and like I can't seem to find a way to duplicate that anywhere else. But Instagram is probably the best bet because Facebook, I'm on Facebook also, but I usually only friend people that I've met in person.
Mm-hmm.
Even like comic fans that I've met at conventions and stuff. But it's people I've met in person that I know won't like annoy my relatives and stuff that I interact with on there. I'm trying to be more active on Threads. Trying to get that going because I'm not really a big fan of like Blue Sky or anything like that. That's too much work.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be sure to include those links in the show notes for people to check those out.
Yeah, I'm usually just Joe Caramagna everywhere, just as one word. So
All right.
you'll find me. You'll find me. Also, I don't know if you guys know this. Did you know that there's also an Avengers Taco Bell book?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you aware of
Wasn't
that?
there?
Oh,
Was
okay.
there? Wasn't there? Was there a Thor one too? Or
I wasn't involved in the Thor one if there
yeah.
was one.
No.
No, but
There was.
we
And
call those custom comics, the Marvel custom comics. Those are the ones that other companies come in and they commission Marvel to make, promotional tie-ins with their products. One thing I know that this is a Captain America podcast, but I once wrote an Incredible Hulk story for Sleepy's, the mattress company.
Did you really?
That is one that you need to look up and read because
I'm on the hunt.
Hulk angry because Hulk can't get a good night's sleep.
I love it.
That's all I'm gonna say. So you guys have to look it up.
Yep.
And read it. Yes, and it's
All
funny
over
because
that.
a few years ago, a friend of mine brought a copy to me to sign at a show, which I thought was funny.
That's great.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's my tour de force.
That's got to be the most expensive thing that you have to buy for a giveaway comic.
Yeah,
buy a
actually, what they
mattress,
did,
get a comic.
that was actually a really great thing because, as silly as it was, they sold them at Sleepy stores across the country for $3 each, and all the money was donated to the American Cancer Society. So they
Oh,
ended up
that's
raising a lot of
great.
money. Yeah, it was
Wow.
really cool. It was a really cool project.
Yeah.
Silly as all get out, but
Ah,
it's a lot of fun. I love, I'll work on anything. So
well,
Well
listen, Joe, we
done.
do appreciate you coming on the show today and
thank you.
taking us through the whole process. It was enlightening and fascinating, and I know our listeners will think the same thing. So, really do appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much, guys. Great meeting you.
Take care, Joe.
Well, Bob, I got to tell you, I Joe's a super nice guy. Glad to have him on the show, and
Mhm.
wow, he had some really cool stories there too. I learned a lot about lettering. I didn't know some of those things, so I hope our listeners really did appreciate Joe getting into the detail like that.
Indeed, and I mean it's a craft in and of itself, and you think about the years of training that like he's in professional development that he's experienced, to just become a master of the craft, and just his workload is just incredible to me. The number of books that he works on, in addition to the side project, I mean, he's a real workhorse.
Yeah. And I will also say what a wonderful thing that he does whenever he goes to a show and he
Mhm.
checks out the local Ronald McDonald House to basically make sure donations go to that to help. It's a great charity for those who hopefully will never have to experience it, right? And
Right.
hopefully they'll never have to worry about their child in those situations because you know what, like if your child is in a hospital and there's a serious medical problem going on, the last thing you need to worry about is where are you going to stay, where are
Mhm.
you going to sleep, how are you going to take care of things. You just want to focus on your child, and Ronald McDonald House does an excellent job of providing that service. And kudos to Joe and to all his fans who go out and donate, so that that charity can continue supporting a very worthwhile cause.
Yeah, indeed. My own family has benefited from that. So from the Ronald McDonald House, and so it's nice to hear that there's folks out there like Joe that are making that possible. Who every one of us can do something, and he's a real exemplar of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Uh, and so next episode, Bob, episode 192, we're going back to Streets of Poison. This is part 6 of the 7-part story, and it's getting good, right? So
Yeah.
Cap, I think was last time we saw Cap, who's really strung out on drugs, was taken down by Black Widow and Diamondback, and now, and then the Red Skull is about to be ambushed by Bullseye, and the Kingpin is, trying to move on in the territory. I mean, there's all kinds of
There's
things
all
going
kinds of
on.
stuff going on. Yeah, yeah. It's action packed with a lot of great characters and leaving us on a cliffhanger every time. So we gotta figure out what happened.
Yeah, and make sure you check it out on YouTube as well, or Spotify, because we do have the video on there, so you could see some of the some of the panels that we're talking about too. Because gotta love Ron Lim's art. It's really cool.
Indeed, indeed.
All right, Bob. As always, it's been fun wrapping Cap with you.
It has. And Rick, I don't. Did you notice we're both wearing the same shirt today?
Ah,
So
twinsies.
go buy a lottery ticket, everybody. Well, at least us. It'll be over by the time. The luck strike will be over by the time we get to this. But in any case, I'll see you next week, Rick.
Excellent. All right. Well, he's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And if you don't mind, please make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. If you're on YouTube, please, smash that like button and subscribe. And again, anywhere else, please make sure you share your comments. We love hearing the feedback from you. So thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.